Hi, it's Lauren. Welcome back to my craft room. It's the 25th of the month, so it's time for some Christmas inspiration. I'm going to be using a lot of scrapbook.com exclusives today. I have the mini Holly Jolly stamp set, the Wordfetti Fa La La stamp set. I have the Peppermint Winter 6x8 stencil, my Snowflakes die set, and my Peppermint 6x8 cardstock pad bundle, so the pattern collection and the smooth cardstock. I'm going to grab a few more things along the way, but this is the bulk of the Christmas items I'm going to be using for today's card. I'm grabbing the third largest of my nested A2 rectangles, and I'm using the dark blue cardstock from the Peppermint Smooth Cardstock Pack. And I'm going to be using my Peppermint Winter stencil along with some Brutus Monroe glitter glaze, and this is the color navy. I wanted some tone-on-tone look on this cardstock, so that's why I'm using navy on top of navy, and it will just give a really nice subtle background because it's literally just a clear glaze with blue glitter. So it's a great way to add glitter to projects without making too much of a crazy mess. You still have to clean up after the glaze, but at least I don't have a jar of glitter that I can accidentally spill everywhere. So I'm just using a palette knife to spread all of the glitter paste or glitter glaze along my stencil to cover the blue cardstock. I'm going to peel that up and look at how beautiful this glitter is on top of the blue cardstock. I really love that, like I said, tone on tone look. I'm going to grab a baby wipe and clean off all of my supplies, and then we'll jump into the next part of the card. So my background is going to be using the Peppermint cardstock paper pad, and I'm using the largest of my nested A2 rectangles. So this will cut an exact A2 size piece of cardstock. And I'm using this kind of lighter blue garland background paper, and my stenciled piece of cardstock will sit on top of that when I put my card together. I grabbed my mixed metal glitter paper. I have it in a slimline size, and I'm just using this piece of silver cardstock, and luckily it fit two snowflakes quite perfectly on that piece of cardstock. And I ran it through my die cut machine, and I also used a shim when I die cut those out because that glitter paper is a little bit different than cardstock. Cardstock. So having that little extra help when running it through your die cut machine is what I recommend when using the glitter paper cardstock from scrapbook.com. I die cut another rectangle out of some white cardstock paper, and this is where I'm going to stamp my sentiment. I'm using the Holly Jolly stamp from that mini stamp set, and I realized that before I stamp that down, I did want to add some background to my paper. I was going to emboss this sentiment, but I thought it would probably be better to add my background stamping before stamping the main sentiment for the card. So I'm grabbing my Misty, and I'm going to grab that Wordfetti Fa La La stamp set. And I'm going to randomly just pick some of these holiday sentiments, and I'm going to use my Misty to help line all of these sentiments in a row. So I have my first one where I know I need it to be placed, and I put it on my Misty, and it actually fit perfectly in my grid. Like, it went in between the top and bottom line, so it was just lined up in my grid. So because of that, I was able just to easily line up a few more sentiments on my Misty following the same grid space. I'm going to be grabbing this Kiddie Pool Blue Lawn Fawn ink. You can get it in the Sandy Shores ink cube pack from scrapbook.com, and I liked it because I thought it matched that subtle blue that I have going on in my card from that background paper. And I'm just rearranging the same sentiments and stacking them on the Misty in that grid pattern, and just making sure to move the words around so it's not the exact same repeating phrase over and over again. It looks kind of just like a jumble of different Christmas phrases. And once I'm done covering that white piece of cardstock, I'm going to put all those sentiment stamps away, and I can jump back into adding my Holly Jolly. So placing it back in the original spot on my Misty, and I'm going to grab VersaFine Clair in Twilight. It's a kind of a darker blue ink, and it stays wet for just a little bit of time, so it's perfect for using to emboss. So I stamped my sentiment down, and I'm using a holographic embossing powder. Now scrapbook.com doesn't carry this by Ranger right now, but they do have a similar embossing powder from Brutus Monroe called Fairy Dust. So I will have that linked below as an option if you're looking for a clear and holographic sparkly embossing powder. It's pretty much the exact same thing, just a different product. So I'm using my embossing heat gun to melt that embossing powder down, so I have that really nice bold sentiment and with that holographic glitter, and I think it kind of matches that navy glitter glaze when it's all together. Now I'm working on a rough layout, but my background is still not dry, so I'm gonna have to come back and finish this card after I'm done with another project. I thought if I moved on to another project, by the time I was done, it should be dry. But I was making this card in the middle of the night, so I came back the next day, and it's definitely dry now, and I can put my card together. So I have my garland background, my stenciled middle piece of cardstock, my 2 snowflakes as decoration, and then my foreground of my sentiment right onto my card. And I love the tone on tones of these blues and the silver. Blue and silver are my favorite Christmas color combination. So I'm really happy with the color scheme of this card. I'm going to be using a lot of my adhesive to adhere this down because it is a little warped from stenciling and sitting and drying. So I wanted to cover the back with some adhesive. I used my 2-inch roll and my 1/4-inch roll just to fill in some extra space. And I peeled off all of the release paper, and I'm going to center that to my peppermint pattern paper. I was doing my best to center it, but my adhesive stuck before I was ready, so it's a teensy tiny bit crooked, but you really can't tell. If I just, take a picture of it kind of sideways, tilted at an angle, you won't be able to see that it was slightly off-centered. I just didn't want to risk tearing my paper underneath to try and peel it up and move it. And you know what? It's a homemade card. It's totally fine if things aren't exact or even on all 4 sides. At least that's what I'm telling myself. So now I'm going to glue down my snowflakes. I'm just using some wet glue to adhere those down. And then I'm going to grab my foam adhesive. I have my 2-inch roll, which is my favorite roll on the planet because I could just cut it to fit exactly how I need. And I put foam adhesive along the back of my sentiment, peeled off the release paper, and I'm going to adhere this down, kind of overlapping my snowflakes so that way they just kind of pop out and give a nice little subtle silver shine. I'm going to add some pops of color in Pearl Satin, but before I do that, I'm going to add my background to my card base because I tend to do this. I tend to put pops of color on my card front and then realize I forgot to put it on my card base, and now I have to wait for it to dry. So I remembered, and I'm putting it onto a top folding A2 size white cardstock in the ultra thick Neenah solar white cardstock. And now I'm going to add those pops of color. Again, this is a pearl of the different types of pops of color, and it's satin. So it's kind of like a little bit off white. So it's not like the stark white gloss one. It has that pearl look to it. And I thought that that was a nice kind of tie-in of the white parts of this card and then the silver parts because it has that, shimmer and shine to it. So after I add my pops of color, I think I add, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 onto my card. I'm just tapping on the back side to dome them out and give them more of an enamel dot look rather than that Hershey Kiss look. Here is a final look at my Holly Jolly blue and silver Christmas card. I hope you liked this idea and you try it yourself. Again, I'm just trying to show some easy Christmas card or winter card inspiration for you each 25th of the month. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you'll click like, and if you're new here, I hope you'll subscribe and come back. As always, you can find everything I use down below in the description box. Thank you and have a wonderful day. Bye!